Hello everyone, my name is Sylvia and these are the members of my group. So it's Calista, Travis, Jamie, Nikki and I, Sylvia. So today we're going to talk about the Westray mine disaster and everything that happened about this event.
What happened during the Westray mine disaster? On May 9, 1992, 26 men were laboring in the mine when at 5:18 a.m. a massive explosion lit up the sky. The official inquiry into the disaster was profound as stupidity and neglect on the owner's part, but when it came down to the attempting to prosecute the company and the officials, it failed. It took 11 years for the law to finally be changed and make the employees criminally responsible for the workers that were killed. How did the disaster happen? This incident occurred when a methane gas leak into the Westray mine shaft from the Ford coal steam mixed with the coal dust, which had triggered the explosion. When the explosion went off, it lit up the sky with a blue flash. Within only seconds, 26 miners working underground on that shift had been killed. In, in a little over an hour, a team of men were down in the mine on foot to rescue the employees, but there were no survivors from the incident. The coal that they were mining had been mined for 200 years with a very long history of explosions. There were many concerns before that the mine had even opened because of the safety risks that were labeled potentially one of the most dangerous in the world.
Despite the efforts of Kura Resources Incorporated managing the news to outside sources, information began to trickle out strongly suggesting that systemic failures at many levels caused the disaster. The Westray Public Inquiry under Justice Peter K. Richard found the likely cause of the explosion was a spark from a coal-cutting machine hitting stone. This ignited a buildup of methane near the roof. The ensuing explosion and fire stirred up the abundant coal dust, accelerating the explosion throughout the mine, killing all in its path and leaving deadly carbon monoxide behind. Early on, the company scrapped the original plans and changed tunnel directions so it could tap into the coal seam sooner. Nova Scotia's Department of Natural Resources was worried that route would cross major geological faults. At one point, it threatened to pull Westray's mining permit but backed off for reasons that were never explained. The Nova Scotia Department of Labor also expressed concerns about training and certification of workers and the lack of an emergency plan. In its first 2 months of operation, the mine experienced 4 roof falls. Department of Labor inspectors repeatedly asked the company for roof support plans. The department also raised concerns about the mine's failure to clean up the highly flammable coal dust that lined the floors and walls, and its lack of stone dusting, a process to neutralize the material's explosive nature. Weeks before the disaster, a provincial inspector issued an order to have the coal dust cleaned and the stone dusted, but did not enforce the order during a return visit just days before the explosion. Since the explosion, there had been a flurry of legal and administrative activity in response to the disaster. Charges under provincial health and safety laws were belatedly brought and then dropped after Curragh and 2 of its employees, Gerald Phillips, the former Westray mine manager, and Roger Perry, the former underground manager. They were swiftly charged with manslaughter and criminal negligence. These charges were dismissed as inadequate and subsequently successfully relayed. Families of the victims filed notice of an intent to sue Curragh Resources, its board of directors, Clifford Frame, the manufacturers of machinery used in the mine, and the governments of Nova Scotia and Canada. Compensations for the families of miners who died is being paid by the Nova Scotia's Workers' Compensation Board, and it is estimated that the benefits will total $15 million.
The accident was so horrific that it had led to the bill C-45 being put into place. This bill is now known as the Criminalization Code of Occupational Health and Safety Act, in addition to Section 217.1 of the Canadian Criminal Code that anyone who takes authority to give directions on how others do their work is under legal duty to take steps to prevent harm to the worker. It took a disaster like Westray Mine to create a new powerful requirements for those who work in the mines and other jobs such as construction. The impact of this accident on the world was long-term, which is why Bill C-45 to this day could also be known as the Westray Bill.
So the impact of this event involved several factors, including people, process, environment, material, and equipment. The impact on people was the death of 26 workers, also as the emotional and social impacts that it caused to the families of the workers who died, and the dismissal of the 113 who were left unemployed after the mine closes. So, in the process, the disaster impacted the entire work process of the mine, since it collapsed due to the explosion, and after this, the mine had to close. So, the environment, the pollution generated by the explosion, and the methane gas that was released generate on the impact of the environment. In the materials, this disaster caused a strong economic impact not only to the mining company that went bankrupt, but also to the province and the government, since they had multiple lawsuits that were successful and they had to compensate many people. So, and the last one was the equipment, that is another impact generated by this disaster, was the loss of all the equipment that was part of the company, and the explosion caused internal and external damage. So also there are immediate impacts addressed and long-term impact addressed. For the immediate impacts addressed was the control of the emergency. The first thing was to put out the fire and try to control it was with the help of the firefighters of the province and the different emergency entities that went to attend to that situation. Also for the next 6 days, emergency crew tried to reach all 26 men trapped below, and then 15 of 26 bodies were covered. 11 were never found. So, the secure people and medical care, control of the fire caused by explosion. So, the long-term impacts addressed were all the demands and the family of the workers' process or places. The change in the safety and health legislation in the workplace, also compensations 6 months later for the workers who become unemployed due to the close of the mine. In total, the INCURE made 74 recommendations to improve health and safety in the mining industry. Also, the compensation for the families of workers who died.
Westray had lied about the safety of its job site and the equipment, leading them to shut down 8 months after the accident, which had killed 26 miners. To prevent accidents like this from happening again, Bill C-45 was put into place, as well as an addition to Section 217.1 to the Canadian Criminal Code to help prevent accidents like this in other mines. A change like this has saved lives in mining and other industries, just not by dropping charges and holding the employer responsible for the death of the workers. The employees now comply with standards, rules, and regulations of the OHS Act.
In this incident, the management stated that they had established a policy on how it wanted the operation managed from the safety point of view. The site manager had a job to reinforce the policy and regulations as the workers were working underground. The supervision of the frontline supervisor had the duty to ensure that the policies and regulations were being practiced and adhered to within the workplace, or should we say work environment. All employers and employees are given handbooks which state all the policies and regulations which need to be followed. In my opinion, I do not believe that the employer was trying to prevent the accident from occurring. He had given the workers equipment that was unsafe and did not provide them with a safe working environment. An accident was caused, and a big disaster at that, by one of the pieces of equipment being used in a workplace with improper ventilation, which led to the accident being much more severe than it should have been. When it comes to whether there was any indication of the internal responsibility system adoption in this organization, I would say in this disaster there appears to be a strong lack thereof. The mine management overlooked safe operations, and government officials did not much to interfere to stop wrongful behavior. The Toronto-based employer, Carafe Resources Inc., was responsible for taking every precaution reasonable in the circumstances for the protection of their workers. The Ontario Regulations 213/91 for working in confined spaces sets out legislation for early detection of the gases below ground level, in which this project would not have proceeded. The IRS should have been established, promoted, and ensured that it was fully functioning. Toolbox talks meetings, they only take 5 minutes. They are a good way to engage and help workers recognize and control hazards. Had the supervisors been more responsible for making sure their workers were fully aware of these hazards and what they may have encountered while performing the work in the mine, this disaster could have been prevented, such as the spark that was caused from the coal cutting machine and creating coal dust where methane gas was present. Only after the superiors make a valid contribution to the IRS could the workers in the Westray mine accurately assess health and safety problems and practices and make it their duty to report their findings to their employer or a supervisor who would then address these hazards and concerns. All the workers should have participated in health and safety programs, training, and appropriate PPE should have been worn to establish a strong internal responsibility system with respects to their right to know, their right to participate, and their right to refuse.
And these are our reference, and this is all about our presentation, guys. If you have any question, professor or guys, feel free to ask. Thank you so much for your attention.